Hello and welcome to Something Paranormal TV. I'm Frank Solty, one of your hosts. This is Matt Bird. Today we have a great guest in the studio, Ken DeCosta from RISEUP Paranormal.
Welcome, Ken.
Thank you for having me.
Very good to have you come down today on this half rainy day we got going on.
It's okay, a little sun, a little rain. My pleasure to be here.
That's great. You know, we had met, I think it was about last year at this time.
Last summer, yeah.
Up at Belcourt when you guys were running the tours through there. That was a great place to for an investigation. I don't think you could script an investigation better than that.
No, I mean, that's right out of the central casting. That one, you know, the mansion is phenomenal. A lot of the history behind it, it just speaks for itself. So it was a great time, and I was happy to host you guys there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you were very courteous to us when we were there, and you know, getting a chance to you know, bring some of the groups out, you know, with our investigations too, was a great thing.
Well, you were very welcome there. You did a great job.
Thank you. We actually got a lot of good evidence from there, a lot of good EVPs and stuff. And I know you guys had caught some very interesting things with one of the doors shutting up in the part of the
up in the orchestra loft.
Orchestra room. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess the best thing about it was holding the public investigations there, that a lot of our guests came up with some great evidence, which was surprising but yet not surprising. But the really odd thing about it was that Belcourt has quite a paranormal history and a lot of legends surrounding it. As it turned out, we didn't really corroborate many of those legends, as far as, you know, there weren't suits of armor screaming and anything like that. But we found a lot more different things. And that was the really interesting part. And Mrs. Tinney was very gracious hostess, and we had the run of the place. So it was quite an experience, and one I'll not soon forget.
Yeah, it was very interesting. And just to have a chance to go into a Newport mansion and, you know, almost unattended, so to speak. I know you guys did a great job at hosting it, but you had that feeling where, you know, you weren't being watched over your shoulder the whole time.
Get a free run of the place, which is
I
nice,
mean, to have someone essentially give you the key to a Newport mansion, say lock up on your way out. You know, 20, 30 years ago, I wouldn't think I was going to be in that. I'm the type of guy that they'd keep out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
you know, we owe a lot of that to a lot of groups, and you know, this big TV hype that's going on over the past decade. You know, my personal beliefs is, if it wasn't for them kind of breaking a lot of ground with these places, you know, it might not have been possible.
Sure, absolutely. I think there's a yin and yang to the television, the pop culture phenomenon that we have now. Basically, it's good because people are more willing to come forward with their stories now.
Sure.
They don't feel quite as intimidated or quite as funny about sharing that, and that's good that that's brought that. On the other hand, it has maybe created some unreasonable expectations of
I think some of the shows
as well
have definitely gone off in a different direction.
Yeah. And I know that taking people through these investigations, and I mean, I want to stress that, I mean, we're not a tour group.
Sure.
We're an actual investigation team, but we do like to get into the community with a lot of nonprofit places and kind of help them with restoration and maintenance and things like that. So it's kind of rewarding. It's nice to it's nice to get out there, but when people do come to investigate, we like to give them a little bit more genuine look at what we're doing, which basically means, you know, hours of mind-numbing nothing going on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And some people, within 15 minutes, if something doesn't happen, you know, they tend to lose interest, and others just, they embrace it.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's good on both sides of that fence, because when things don't happen, I think you learn pretty quick that maybe this isn't for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think patience is a big thing about being an investigator.
Number one.
You know, even in, you know, as far as even in evidence review. I mean, if you listen to 15 minutes of audio, it takes you an hour and a half to bang out 15 minutes, and people are like, why does it take that long? And it's, You know,
That's why we have 10 people in our group.
Yeah.
I just need that many just to go over evidence.
No,
and
I
stuff
bet.
like that. No, I mean,
Very, very tedious process, that's for sure.
But
People that
when-
watch,
you have to share it.
Yeah, absolutely. They watch the shows and, they see them, here's the evidence review, and there's 3 guys sitting at a table for 15 minutes, and, they come through with this evidence. It's a little deceiving when you actually figure out most cases. I know for our group, it takes us probably, on average, probably 3 to 4 weeks to get back to a client if we give them a legitimate, look at all the evidence. All your static cameras. If you set up just even a basic 4-camera setup, you're talking, if it's a 4-hour investigation, I mean, that's
16 hours of video
And
alone.
that's 4 hours is light.
yeah.
Yep, very low.
But you're talking about 16 hours of looking at everything. It's
And
funny that we're talking about this because a good friend of ours, Joe Chin, right here in Rhode Island on Ghost Hunters International, we've had a chance to go out with Joe numerous occasions, and we talked to him a little bit about the process of TV and things like that, and review and how all this gets done. And they don't quite sit around a table by themselves and knock all this off. It's a collaborative effort.
Yeah, it definitely is, and it takes a big supporting cast, and not only a supporting cast, but a supporting cast that actually knows what to look for.
Absolutely.
Because even in EVPs, there's a lot of other factors that you got to contribute to what's the final product of an EVP. For us, I think one of the things that we do, even in investigating, is we always stay together in groups of either male or female. If it's male people in the house and you're getting female EVPs, it makes it a little easier to kind of sometimes solidify it. And any other way around, we're predominantly male, in our group. But
that's the toughest thing, I think, is because we can't put people in a hotel.
Yeah.
Yep.
We can't send children away, and that's the thing that I think people need to realize in the real world. Sometimes a family can't go anywhere, so it's not a sterile environment all the time as we'd hope it would be, which is why tagging audio and things like that, and setting up multiple recorders so they can corroborate each other. And you got to be a little creative sometimes with that.
Yeah, I mean, as far as even equipment, it's come a long way with what you can have for technology, but I think some of the basic tools are still probably some of the best ones to utilize.
Yeah, probably from here up.
Yeah.
It's one of the best ones.
It's definitely one of the key ones, and sometimes just sitting in a room being quiet is the best thing to do.
Absolutely. Sometimes you just let the building talk to you. We like to begin like that. The first half hour or so, just sit, listen, and maybe some of these sounds that we're getting claims at, maybe we can identify those and eliminate them as natural causes right away and kind of focus in on what we need to.
Sure. I mean, there's so many, with so many shows out there in this paranormal hysteria, so to speak, a lot of people that hear a creak in their house is automatically, it's a ghost in my house. And, they're calling you saying, they're seeing people and they're hearing things. And I think it's, and again, our protocol is, we kind of go in with an open mind no matter what the case calls, if whether they're calling saying they're getting scratched and pushed down a stairway or there's very little going on. It's always to kind of go in and let's put all that aside and kind of really see what's going on here.
Well, we call that stacking, and we use that term because a lot of times somebody will have one or two things happen in a location, regardless if it's a private home, a business, what have you, that are legitimate and can't be explained. But what happens is, with a heightened state of anxiety, every little thing that happens, people tend to take it and put it in the paranormal stack. And then pretty soon it's this big, and then, because they are a little upset, a little nervous, a little anxious. So what you have to do is just kind of peel those away a little bit until you get back at the core of exactly what it is that you want to spend your time focusing on.
Yeah, and I think, when you have legitimate cases, I think sometimes when you talk to these people for the first time, they're just worn out because mentally it's been so draining for them. But exactly what you're saying, I mean, maybe a few things out of it was actual activity, and because it's in their home and they can't just leave and go home for the night, they're there, as many hours of the day as it calls for, with nowhere else to go, that everything becomes paranormal, and it becomes this heightened state that any creak in the house is automatically the ghost trying to do something bad to you.
We see, and I know you guys do, we see an awful lot of that, where, again, that heightened sense of anxiety there, and people tend to assign it a paranormal value because they're on edge to begin with. So one of the things that we're always trying to do in a legitimate manner is try to eliminate as much of that as we can. And I think all legitimate groups that really have the client's best interest at heart will always do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's actually one of the toughest parts of being an investigator, is siphoning through what's real and what's not, just an overactive imagination.
In a relatively short amount of time, because it's not always 8, 9, 10 hours at a location. And then you understand if somebody's lived in that place for 20 years, we have a very small window in which to try to draw a conclusion. Yeah. And it's not always possible. Sometimes it's multiple times and hours and hours and hours. You know.
And sometimes the client doesn't want to hear that nothing's going on in the house. No. I've actually, even more recently, had a client get mad because I told him I don't believe there's much going on there in a negative sense. For me, if I was living in a house that had activity, that'd be the best news in the world.
You want to hear it was your imagination.
Well, one of our guys, Chris Blanchett, actually lives in a place that we've investigated multiple times in Tiverton. So, I envy him, but not his fiance. Well, this is his wife now. Excuse me.
Better watch with that.
Recently married. I'm sorry, Chris, but lucky, and so she just goes a different way.
With it. Yeah.
I think it's easier for everybody as an investigator when you get to separate yourself from the occurrences. You get to go home at the end of the day, and a client doesn't always
and leave it.
Exactly.
My wife has just that one request: just don't bring anyone home with you, and I'll indulge your hobby here. And
no, I mean, that's an interesting subject in general. I mean, I don't know, have you guys had any experiences with that, of something potentially following you home, or had some type of activity that happened in a place somebody was living?
Personally, I don't believe so, and we're all pretty close in the group, and I'm sure that if anybody within our group had that, they would have talked about it, but I haven't had any experience. I remember walking into a location one time, and a woman there who was a sensitive said that there was a woman in my car waiting outside, and I just said, as long as they chip in for gas, I have no problem with it. But no, which, a lot of these things does not mean that it's not right around the corner. But everyone goes into a location with their own belief system, and if someone would like to say a prayer or do anything to make themselves comfortable, we respect that.
Yeah. How do you personally feel about that? I mean, not to get too far into religion, because that's your business, but are you for, doing a prayer before and after an event, or is it something that you don't really feel is necessary?
It's not something that I would do ceremoniously, for lack of a better word, where we all gather together. Sure. I have my own way of preparing for something, and I think everybody as an individual does. So you've got that mutual respect there. Yeah. But to me, it's not something that we organize. I'm not going to say we don't feel it's necessary, because that's kind of callous. But I know some groups do, individuals do, and I have nothing but the utmost respect for those people. I would gladly wait until they were prepared to go anywhere.
Sure.
With them.
I mean, I think for us, we're pretty much all Christian people, and it really depends on where we're going. If we're going on some historical place that just supposedly has a little activity, I don't think it's as necessary as going into a place where, in quote, we say that a customer calls you up, or a client, and says that I'm getting scratched every night, and it's really a bad environment. Something like that, I would definitely take more precaution to, and grab the group together and really try to utilize any strength we have, because on their plane, I mean, we're just there. I mean, we have no we can't retaliate against something you can't see or hear.
Exactly. You expect nothing but prepare for everything.
Yeah. I think it's just
worst.
Trying to be a little more prepared, like you're saying, than anything else.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, one of the common threads in paranormal, I think more than recently, is a lot of the groups are, claiming a lot more of demonic cases. Now, my personal belief is, there are demonic cases, but it's not every one of them that you come across by any stretch. Honestly, I think, out of all
less than 0.5%.
Of one.
Boils down.
Thankfully,
we've been on, I think, legitimately, where I can tell you that in my beliefs, I really say is, a negative entity, or a negative inhuman, if you want to use that for better words. Probably one case out of, the whole time we've been doing this, and it's a case that wasn't determined, in one round. We didn't just go in there once and say, oh, that's it, it's something negative, and leave with that feeling. It was something that was, over a long period of time. I think actually
Continues to be ongoing, and
Yeah.
I think it probably always will be.
we're probably 7-8 months into this case, and we've been on multiple cleansings and stuff, and it's just a house with some very stubborn.
Well, I mean, any legitimate demonic haunting is an incredible process. I can honestly tell you that I don't believe that we have ever encountered anything like that. I don't doubt the existence of inherent evil, whether that comes in the form of a deity, or whether it's psychological, or genetic, or whatever the case may be. I believe there is real evil in the world. Again, the demonic case may be right around the corner. We've been in the presence of what I think are some aggressive and malevolent type of entities, to assign that word. But I mean, the demonic approach really has to do with getting into belief systems, and this is where the slippery slope comes, because obviously you have a belief system, the subject also has a belief system, and sometimes they mesh and sometimes they don't mesh. Your beliefs may be a bit different, so this is where I think that the process comes from, so everyone can be somewhat comfortable in their own skin when dealing with something like that.
We've been fortunate enough in Rhode Island that we have some really good people that are in that field. I mean,
we really
the
do.
Johnson, Keith and Carl are two of the top in the field, period. I don't care what country or
really
city
do.
you're in.
Just happened to be right in the backyard, pretty much.
Been fortunate enough to be very nice people on top of that. So
Well, the thing about that is that people have had that experience, and I'm sure that I certainly can't speak for Keith or Carl here, but I think that there is also a knowledge of the potential of a mental illness or psychosis that you also have to factor into in the extreme cases of possession and things like that, because there aren't a lot of groups really qualified to diagnose and identify a potential mental illness which may play into it. So you have to walk a fine line with that, I really believe, because you're not sure if by going in you're not enabling someone who's already in a very fragile state of mind. So you have to discern that, and sometimes it's okay to go in, and be edgy and extreme, and we have a demonic case, but they're not to be taken lightly.
yeah, and I think one of the hardest things is, when you say there's not many groups out there qualified to do this, there's really not too many places to turn to seek information about these subjects.
There really isn't.
There really isn't. And when you get yourself involved in a case that you really don't know what's going on, and you've done and exhausted every revenue that you could possibly do, and it's still there, and it doesn't go away.
Well, this is why the Catholic Church, no pun intended, it's an act of God sometimes to get them involved, because they do realize the potential drawbacks or potential liability in dealing with what could be a psychosis and not necessarily, something spiritual.
Sure.
So this is why there's an evaluation. We're fortunate to have a psychologist who's in our group, but even at that, this is a process. You can't go in for an interview for an hour and expect Ryan Lantini, in this case, this is something that takes days, weeks, months, sometimes even years to diagnose and come to a conclusion. And it can't be done to judge someone's mental state by asking them 20 questions.
Sure, and that's a great point. And we're going to take a short break, and we're actually going to show you some clips of Rise Up. Ken was nice enough to bring some clips that they've caught on some investigations in the past, and we're going to let you take a listen to some of that and actually see a few parts, potentially, of potential evidence.
Yeah.
And we'll be back in a few minutes.
Thank you. Just,
Take the stupid glasses off. I can't see a thing. Okay. You want to run the EVP? What? You want to run the EVP? I'm just going to try to get some readings.
Okay.
Welcome back to Something Paranormal TV. Those clips were pretty interesting. Care to elaborate on some of the ones that you found personally to be some of the best stuff you'd found?
Well, one of the interesting ones is twofold, and that's the take the weapons off, which was interesting because when we caught that, we were inside the tinny master bedroom, and it didn't make a lot of sense, which actually added to the legitimacy of it, because, you know, normally you're always looking at who's whispering, who's talking. 12 hours later, you don't remember if somebody whispered. But the content of what was said does not make any sense whatsoever. I mean, there aren't any weapons in that particular room, obviously. So when we hear something like that, as near as I can figure, and I'm kind of projecting this, I admit, but when you have a group of investigators walking around with gizmos in their hand, pointing them, asking you to show yourself, maybe that's a normal reaction. Take the weapons off.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, I'll come out. But the interesting part is when you guys, I guess 2 weeks later, you had heard the story and heard the clip.
Yep.
And you got your own thing that dealt with the same thing,
Yeah.
taking the weapons off in an entirely different
And what was funny is Joe and myself were actually in there talking to your tech manager,
Dave, yeah.
Dave, and we're the only ones in the room, three guys, and you know, Dave's telling us about this EVP that I believe it was Ann that had caught,
Yep, Ann caught
the
it.
week before, or a couple of
Right.
weeks before, and
From our Connecticut group, Ann,
He's saying, oh yeah, this EVP says take the weapons off, and we have a female voice that almost sounds like surprised, and she actually says, take the weapons off, and starts laughing like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? So it was kind of really interested in the fact that it was female, right underneath all three guys talking was really something special.
When I heard that clip, she sounded like she was kind of amused at
Yeah.
the whole thing, as amused as we.
But it's definitely female voice.
It was a great experience.
And the clip that you played from Sprague Mansion, outstanding. I mean, it has that reputation as, you know, the most haunted place
Sure, absolutely.
in the state. We were lucky to go in twice for an investigation there. And what was really intriguing about it in that particular bedroom, we know that one of the Sprague children had passed, young girl at the age. There is some doubt as to whether it was 10 or 14 years old. We found this out after the fact, but on the one hand, it's exhilarating to get something like that, but on the other hand, it's disturbing when someone's calling for their mother and you know that there was a potential of illness.
Now, how did you feel as far as residual or intelligent in that type of, in that place in general, Sprague?
Both.
You have a mixture of both of them?
Yeah, I think we had a mixture of both, and that's not unusual. But in that setting, I think that there have been a lot of claims of a lot of psychic imprints or residual, whatever you want to call them, excuse me. But we have a host of intelligent responses where people are telling us about the furniture and the rooms that they slept in and things like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's a combination of both there. And it continues as far as, you know, what I understand is a new board, new people coming in,
Yeah.
but they're constantly still having experiences there, all really positive.
Well, that's a good thing. I mean, at least it's a positive manner in the building,
Oh, yeah.
which is important.
They're still there.
I'd like to introduce to the show James Annitto. James is a soon-to-be demonologist with practicing under Carl Johnson. Welcome here.
Welcome, James.
And we brought James here today to you know, touch upon a little bit what we talked about before the break and how you know, the new millennium of paranormal groups and demonologists coming out are, getting a lot of calls from people that, they're seeing these TV shows with, all these demonic cases, and, right away they hear something in the house and they're looking for a demonologist on the phone to come and take care of their problem before they really know what's going on in there. And I just wanted to know, like, I'm sure you get a lot of stuff through the website. We've worked with you a few times, and how do you determine whether it's a case that you'd like to go out and possibly see if there's that type of activity there versus, giving somebody advice and maybe it's not something what they think it is?
Well, I do a lot of consulting and a lot of evaluation, a lot of emails back and forth with the client. One of the things that you look at with the client is the history, the background of the story. You can see loopholes in how they type, see how they're educated, and you can look through and cipher if they're actually telling the truth. But most of the times, if there's something demonic, and even if there's a kid involved, most of the time if it's closely oriented, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, I'll usually do it because Father Bob, who I work with also, and Carl always tell me, if there's nothing demonic there, you should always still at least do a cleansing, because even if they have psychological issues, that'll put it on the back burner, and it'll help them out transition, and maybe they actually realize that actually something's wrong with them.
Sure.
There's a lot of testing. Like, I was hearing that they have psychologists in your group, which is a good thing. I've never studied under that, but my basics of knowing somebody and knowing if they're lying, it's just perception. I've dealt with a lot of people in my life. I've been in the military, so I can tell if somebody's lying.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of evaluation. I think every client I deal with is probably about over 10 emails, paragraphs long, trying to discuss what's going on. There's some, I think we did the New Jersey case, I like to call. We ciphered through so many emails, so much evidence caught by other groups, and we went there, of course, because
And it is a little different for you because a lot of the clients that you get already have paranormal groups that have gone in there and did some type of investigation. But that also makes it hard on you, and if we do a case with you or another group does a case with you from here, is you're taking some other group's evidence based on their, a reliable group, and kind of what you're taking to look at is legitimate evidence, when we don't, to have an EVP, that's, say a Class A EVP, which is hard to distinguish, but if me and you were in a room doing an EVP session, we're the only ones in the building. It's, we're closed off. We know what we sound like. We have a lot of parameters that the outside person doesn't have.
Sure.
Where if we get this Class A woman EVP, saying something, where we can say, all right, we listen to it once, it's female, we know that's an EVP, without even going any further. Of course, we're going to, go through the check down to see if it's a real EVP. But, if we're in that room and everything else is closed off and you have a female, I can almost guarantee you that that's a real EVP right off the bat, just because there's two people and there's three voices and one's female.
Out of place.
Okay, thank you for coming in tonight.
It's been my pleasure.
And James also having us.
Great to see you.
Thank you also for being here.
You're welcome.
You can check out more of Rise Up at riseupparanormal.com, where you can see more evidence that they've caught, and even some of the great historical places that they help host some of these events at. Check them out. You can also check out our site at ecprt.com. Thanks for coming.